Super teams are what so many people love and hate about the modern NBA. From Wilt joining the Lakers in the 60s to the Pistons team of the 1980s and modern powerhouses like the Golden State Warriors, super teams have had a long and impactful history on the landscape of the league, and they're not likely to go anywhere anytime soon. But while you can't deny super teams are capable of creating some of the most exciting and dominant basketball there is, they can also achieve the opposite. For every great super team, there are three that let us down. The promises, the hype, the preseason photos. Sometimes it's too much, and teams absolutely stacked with talent struggle to even make the playoffs. That's why today we're going to take a look at some of the NBA super teams that, frankly, let us down. From injuries to on-the-court issues and more, you might be shocked at some of the teams you find on this list. The 2007-2008 Phoenix Suns. When we think of super teams that let us down, we can't ignore the 07-08 Phoenix Suns. People forget, but in the 2000s, the Suns were nice with it. Led by two-time league MVP Steve Nash, Phoenix were serious title contenders, having finished consistently in the top two of the Western Conference standings since signing their star point guard in 2004. And Nash wasn't alone. From NBA Rookie of the Year Amare Stoudemire to all-defensive first-team shooting guard Raja Bell, Phoenix had a solid team that was capable of showing up and showing out in deep playoff runs. But despite all this talent, something wasn't working. They had made back-to-back conference finals appearances and had one of the most talented teams in the league, yet they just couldn't secure themselves a spot in the NBA Finals. Going into the 2007 offseason, management decided that what Phoenix needed right now was a super team. They traded their human rebound machine, Shawn Marion, for an aging Shaquille O'Neal, hoping that a bigger, meaner, and older center could help give Phoenix the edge in the paint they were missing. And to top it all off, the Suns also acquired seven-time NBA All-Star Grant Hill on free agency, firmly securing their spot as a super team going into the 2007-08 season. But for all their hype, talent, and championship potential, Phoenix struggled. They finished the season as a 6th seed in the West, their worst finish since re-signing Nash. And going into the first round of the playoffs, they faced a challenge, the San Antonio Spurs. In the end, the Suns lost the series 4-1. This had been the first time since 2004 they had failed to make it out of the first round, and coupled with their average regular season performance, it was obvious Phoenix super team experience had been a letdown for everyone. The 2015-16 Golden State Warriors. When you think of letdown super teams, the 73-9 Warriors that dominated the league back in 2016 are probably not your first thought, but stick with us. There is almost no other team as statistically successful as the 2016 Warriors. They broke over 25 NBA records as well as more than 10 franchise records that season. And that's not to mention the individual records the players broke. The Death Lineup, as it was known, was not just a super team of individual talent. It was one of the best put-together teams in professional sporting history. You had two-time league MVP Steph Curry, two-time All-Star Klay Thompson, Defensive Player of the Year Draymond Green, and 2015 NBA Finals MVP Andre Iguodala. Not only were they individual ballers in their own rights, but they complemented each other's games and played some of the most unselfish and downright beautiful basketball the league had ever seen. They breezed through the playoffs and made back-to-back NBA Finals appearances, that year facing off against LeBron James' Cavaliers again. The Death Lineup quickly took the lead after 4 games. The Warriors were 3-1 up with 1 game at home to go. Everyone thought it was over. Everyone thought the Warriors were just too good. Everyone except LeBron James. James mounted the first successful 3-1 comeback in NBA Finals history, dropping unbelievable stat lines to force a Game 7 against one of the most successful teams in NBA history. But the San Francisco super team had history on their side. At home, the Warriors were virtually unbeaten, and Game 7 was going to be played in the Bay. Surely this team of all-stars and record breakers could outscore a 32-year-old man, right? Not exactly. The 73-9 Warriors, the most statistically successful team in NBA history, had lost in Game 7 of the NBA Finals to a team that went 57-25 in the regular season. If that isn't a letdown, what is? The 2015-16 Los Angeles Clippers. Back in the mid-2010s, the LA Clippers were a solid team with real championship potential. With 9-time All-Star Chris Paul and towering teammates Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, the Clippers had a big three that was as exciting as it was good. They were known as Lob City. Dunking on everyone and everything, the Clippers had enjoyed back-to-back top three finishes in the Western Conference, but had failed to make it past the conference semifinals. So going into the 2015-16 season, the Clippers front office decided they needed to build the first super team in LA since the 2012 Lakers. They signed Celtic legend Paul Pierce, who despite being on his last legs, gave a relatively young Clippers core some much-needed experience. And with the help of three-time Sixth Man of the Year winner Jamal Crawford, the Clippers had a super team of talent that they hoped would help them make their first ever conference finals appearance. But after a shocking first-round exit to fifth-seeded Portland, the LA Super Team proved to be more a letdown than a let's go. But why? Having all-star level talent is great and all, but they gotta be able to play. And the 2015-16 Clippers suffered from a string of injuries that kept their best players off the floor. Griffin missed the majority of the season with a broken hand, and when he rejoined the team on April 3rd, he'd missed 45 games that season. DeAndre Jordan was out after contracting pneumonia in January. His absence broke his NBA record streak of longest active consecutive games played at 360. In their playoff series defeat after going 2-1 up against Portland, Paul broke his hand in Game 4 and was ruled out indefinitely. With both Paul and Griffin injured, the Clippers super team collapsed. They faced similar struggles the following year, and soon after, it put an end to Lob City forever. The 2012-2013 Lakers. The 2012 Lakers were something different. Hot off their back-to-back championship wins in 2009 and 2010, LA was hoping that with a few additions, their solid already core could challenge for another title. Led by an untouchable Kobe Bryant, the Lakers already had Spanish giant Pau Gasol, small forward Meta World Peace, who together made up a pretty intimidating backcourt. In the offseason, the Lakers acquired Steve Nash and Dwight Howard, putting together an all-star starting five that could make any team shake. But the Lake Show struggled in the regular season, and at one point, even playoff basketball seemed unlikely. But they rallied and finished as a third seed in the West, which meant they would face the Spurs in the first round of the playoffs. The Lakers super team was swept by San Antonio, making this the first time since 2007 that Los Angeles failed to make it past the first round. So what happened? Maybe it was Meta World Peace cursing them when he said, "We definitely want to beat the Bulls' record and go 73-9. Well, the Lakers were kinda doomed from the start. They failed to find an offensive rhythm that complemented all their starters. And after going 0-8 in the preseason and then 1-4 to start the regular season, Coach Mike Brown was fired. The Lakers had to rush to replace Brown and soon gave the position to Mike D'Antoni. But the damage had already been done. That season, the Lakers had their worst start since 1993, and things didn't stop there. Going into the end of the season, the Lakers suffered from a string of injuries that kept their super team from ever fully forming. Just before the playoffs began, the Lakers lost Kobe, who had ruptured his left Achilles tendon. He tried to play through it, but was eventually ruled out indefinitely. Meta World Peace also tore the lateral meniscus in his left knee, sidelining the power forward for 6 weeks. Around this time, Gasol was just coming back from his own 6-week injury stint and struggled to get back into the swing of high-tempo NBA basketball. Nash also got injured, straining a hamstring during a Laker win against Sacramento towards the end of the season. All this proved to be just too much for the Los Angeles Lakers, and they suffered their first opening round sweep since 1967. Talk about legacy. The 94-95 Orlando Magic. Back in the 90s, a young center from Newark, New Jersey was setting the league on fire with his dominant scoring and intimidating frame. Shaquille O'Neal was hoping to help the equally young Orlando Magic win its first ever NBA championship, and things looked like they were going in the right direction. Shaq won Rookie of the Year in '92 and was the first rookie since Jordan to make the All-Star list. A year after drafting Penny Hardaway, Orlando made its first playoff appearance in franchise history. Despite a first-round loss to the Pacers, Orlando's future looked bright. Going into the '94 season, former Bulls power forward and three-time NBA champion Horace Grant was acquired in free agency, as well as future NBA champion Brian Shaw. Alongside scoring machine Shaquille O'Neal and first-time NBA All-Star Hardaway, Orlando had built themselves a formidable super team with one goal in mind: a championship. That season, the Magic won a franchise record 57 games with a 39-2 home record, tying the Chicago Bulls for the second best in NBA history. O'Neal led the league in scoring and came second in the MVP voting that year. Hardaway averaged 20 and was named to the All-NBA First Team, while Grant's 9.7 rebound average earned him an NBA All-Defensive Second Team spot. They dominated the East, comfortably winning their division and finishing as a #1 seed in their conference. And in only their second playoff appearance, Orlando looked unstoppable. They beat the Celtics in 4, overcame the Bulls in 6, and took the Pacers all the way to Game 7, where Orlando eventually came out on top. This meant the Magic would have to face off against the 6th-seeded Houston Rockets, with center Hakeem Olajuwon going head-to-head with fellow All-Star Shaq. For Orlando, the chip seemed as good as theirs. They had dominated the regular season, broken franchise records, and been lucky enough to avoid major injuries and off-court dramas. But what happened next would shock everyone. After losing Game 1 at the free throw line, the unstoppable Orlando not only stopped, they completely fell apart. The Magic got swept, going 0-4 against the Rockets in one of the most brutal NBA Finals ever. It wasn't that Orlando didn't show up. Shaq was still dropping 30 bombs, Hardaway was leading the team in assists, and Grant and Anderson were more than capable of scoring and rebounding at will. But after Anderson missed 4 consecutive free throws in the last seconds of Game 1, Orlando just never recovered. The more experienced Rockets took home their second NBA championship, and Orlando left empty-handed. To this day, the Rockets are still the lowest-seeded team in NBA history to win an NBA championship. Meanwhile, the Magic are still chasing that elusive first ring.